Good morning, everyone. It's great to see so many here after such a spectacular party and a late night for everyone. I hope you all had a good time. I'm really excited for this panel today. I wanted to just briefly give my amazing panelists the opportunity to just introduce themselves, what they do, and then we're going to dive straight into the premise of today's panel. So can I start with Rahela?
Rahela. Hi everyone, my name is Rahela Stefanovic and I'm editor-in-chief for HTV. For 5 programs, I'm charged for scheduling and for picking the content and for the overall of the programs.
Hello, my name is Leonid. I'm Vice President International Sales and Acquisitions at Beta Film, and I'm in charge of acquisitions in the Balkan region.
I feel like I know everybody at this point. But hi, my name is Dana Stern. I'm an Israeli based in Berlin, and I sound American, but I'm not. I work across co-productions, productions, and I also now, as an independent, do a lot of consulting. And
welcome.
Yeah, I feel like a veteran already.
Hi, I'm Dennis Karam. I'm from Zigzag Productions in London. I was born in Croatia. So another thing, being in the Zigzag about over 20 years and the UK for over 30, and we do the unscripted formats mainly, obviously, and we've done about over 600-700 of the documentaries for the past 20 years of our existence.
Fantastic, thank you all so much. We've got an amazing breadth of experience here. I would like to spend the last kind of 5 minutes of the session, which hasn't started counting down. I don't know if we're, yeah, there we go.
We have a little clock here, that's why, so
yeah.
it counts down for us.
So I'll spend the last kind of 5 minutes taking questions from the floor, so start thinking as we go along of things you'd like to ask the panelists. I really firmly believe that great stories are everywhere, but the opportunity to share them isn't necessarily as widespread as we would all like it to be. So the question for the panel really today is, how do we help bring out those incredible stories and formats in unscripted from the region? And I wanted to start just with a bit of context for the audience really of how a project comes to you, at what stage you see it, and what you look for that would make you excited to move forward with that project. I'm going to start actually with Dana. That's right.
Well, sure. So it is very complicated, and this is an industry where it's good to have had something produced already. So it's not, as you said, Haley, it's not all fair, and it's not an equal playing field. But I think, first and foremost, being in markets like this, having the opportunity to speak to people who have done it before, that you can attach yourself and work with creators and producers and distributors and sales agents and anybody that can help you take your project forward is extremely important. And this is a relationship business. Creativity is important, but you can't undermine the importance of a relationship. And getting out there, meeting people, telling them your ideas, following up, maintaining things that you're starting in places like this, or any kind of relationships that you're starting is very, very important. For me personally, I mean, stories are great, but I would say that I always bet on the person and the passion and the uniqueness of their voice and making sure they're resilient enough to go through this, because this is hard and it takes a really, really long time. On average, a series takes a minimum of 5 years for when you have your idea to when you're hopefully, on screen, and it can take much longer. So when I attach myself as a producer to anything, I want to make sure that the people I'm heading out there with realize that, that they're not calling me every week to say what's new, because things don't happen that quickly. But also on their end, when they're asked to do work, also to know that they're taking those notes in and that they realize this is a conversation that needs to be had. So first and foremost, I do look for a passion and a great person, and then of course the story.
Fantastic, thank you. And Leo, how about you? At what stage would you see a project, and what would make you feel like this is something for Better to acquire or co-produce?
At our company we have kind of two departments, co-production and acquisition, and I work for acquisition. And but the goal of both departments are to find so-called local shows, like local shows which can travel globally, and it's kind of specific art, specific type of shows which has to have specific characteristics, as scientifically said. So they have to be at one side local and work locally and some specific territory, but they don't have to be too local. So like they have to be understood in other countries, in other cultures, and that's why it's quite very important so the storytelling of the shows is quite important, because it doesn't have to deal with very, very local things which only audience of this territory could understand. And we work, as I said, I work for acquisition, and basically if you do acquisition, you just acquire a show and then you sell it and then you make money with it, but this is kind of the perfect situation. It happens, but not all the time, and usually we work very tight with the producers on a creative level. For example, we very often do recuts of the shows, and we do so-called international versions, which sometimes are shorter than the original versions, but at the same time, these international versions work globally. And so our acquisition is not a classical acquisition, it's kind of acquisition / co-production. This is what I do, and my colleague Anna, who is in charge of co-production, she basically does the same thing, but on the script level. So she works with projects which are on the can be at the very beginning, and she tries to do the same thing I do in the post-production. She tries to do it during the development, and yeah, so it's the difference between two departments. So, and that's why for me, when I'm looking for the shows who at least already financed. Because that makes sense. Then I can be sure that the show will be made and then acquired. So this is what we do.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. I'm going to get to you in a second, but I just wanted to develop that just for a moment, because I did chat with your colleague Anna ahead of our session, and I know, just to speak to Dana's point, one of the things she said she looks for in a project for Better to get involved is for the storytelling to be really authentic, for it to not feel like a copy of some other show that you've seen, for it to come from a really personal perspective. And we had a chat about this, Leo, about kind of the changes that you would look to make in post-production to make a show more exportable. Can you just speak very briefly about what some of those might be, like the pacing of it, or...
What, sorry?
What kind of changes would you make in post-production?
Okay.
Like changing where the story starts in the first episode, maybe?
Usually, when we're talking about praxis, usually it's always about the first episode. Usually, because at least, I work mostly with the Eastern Europe, and the challenge about Eastern Europe is always doing the proper pilot episodes, because people in Eastern Europe are very creative, they have brilliant ideas, and they also can make stories, plot it, but very often they're not very good at selling the shows. Don't talk only about pitching. Basically, the pilot is also kind of you sell the show, we sell show with the pilot, you show the pilot. and this is how you sell it. And if pilot doesn't work, people don't want to buy it. And it's great then, I know, episode 3 or 4, where the story finally takes off, but it's too late, because if pilot's episode doesn't work, nobody would watch the episode 3. So basically, usually it's about the pilot. So we had a show, for example, which was brilliant, like genius idea, well produced, and but we said, yeah, but we have to recut the pilot episode. At the end, we had a show like original version, 16 episodes, and international version, 15 episodes, and then we sold the 15 episodes version. The same, and sometimes we had shows like where we acquire on the at the pre-production level, but we already see that we would need international version, and we sometimes even put it in the contract that we're going to do an international version which will be shorter than the local version. So this is what we can do, but there are other things which I unfortunately can't do with the characters and so on. So the other things that can be challenging are kind of in Eastern Europe, there are not a lot of shows with strong female characters. And unfortunately, that's a problem which I can't solve in the post-production, because you can't change the sex of the main character. But this is what you can do on development, and this is what we do on in the co-production department.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. I think that's a really helpful insight into that phase. Coming to you, Dennis, obviously you're in the unscripted space. So can you talk a little bit about how ideas are generated in Zigzag, or how projects kind of grow and develop to the point of, you know, taking that show or idea to a commissioner?
Sure. The thing is, like, in order to write either script for me, Zigzag, write it scripted or unscripted format, you have to watch a lot of TV. That's full stop, to see what's all around. And I always share, when I say watching a lot of TV, so at least know what's happening on the TV, not necessarily spending hours. People go, exercise yourself. I'm not behind, so you have to watch TV all the time. But the thing is, there are literally two options that you have in terms of, like, when you go to making something which is yours. It is things that you admire. That means, like, all good masterpieces, either scripted or unscripted, that you love to see and you really like to watching day in, day out, week in, week out. And that is it. They're there for a reason. They're special. You can't make another Godfather, say, oh, I'm going to make Godmother, or whatever it is. You're not going to make another X Factor calling it XX Factor.
Well, unless you come from a family of gangsters and your grandmother was a godmother, then we're very interested.
Okay, put it this way, I can, but nobody else can. No, but seriously, it is, yeah, you're right. So it is stuff which you desire. So it's literally watching it and kind of admiring these things. And the stuff, it is not as good. You're watching, say, oh, you know what, in this documentary or in this movie or this drama, I would change A, B, and C, or they didn't do this. Aha, you're having your ticking brain on. You know where the faults in your eyes are, and that's how you're going to sharpen your skills to make your script better, to introduce it to the end user, or who is going to be producer. So copy and pasting, it's not very good and successful ideas. If you think, oh, I can make another, as I said, XX Factor, it's not really called X Factor, and doing the same. Be original as much as, I know it's easier said than done. Try to persuade your ideas, be behind it, be confident, but not necessarily stubborn. Listen what other people from the industry, professional people, might be able to tell you. Be selfish and take 10% from each conversation you're going to have. And you're going to sharpen up your script in order to process it and say, aha, I'm ticking my boxes and I'm ticking the boxes which there might be a need for the production.
I want to follow up on what you just said, and I can't underestimate enough how important it is to be a savvy television viewer. and really knowing what is working, what isn't working. Not just to know where to position your project in a conversation, but also there's a mechanism to it. And as much as we're not encouraging you to copy ideas, on the contrary, bring your own experiences, bring things that are unique to you, that is your voice. But it is also helpful to look at the mechanism, and especially if there's a great show that you like the way the storytelling is done, seriously, sit down, break it down. See when characters are introduced, when storylines are introduced, what information is given, what is withheld. Really use that as a blueprint of sorts to make your writing and your technical writing better. But inspiration, as much as you can bring in, I would say, from yourself or from the world that you know well, especially as you're starting out, that's your unique selling point. That's what we're all looking for.
Yeah. And I just wanted to, I will come to you. I just wanted to add, we had an amazing workshop with some great writers earlier this week, thanks to NEM. And they were incredibly well watched and incredibly open to developing that craft. And it was really exciting. They had their own original ideas, but they were really inspired by other things and learning the technical skill, which is just so important. So, Rahela, how does a show come to you? At what stage would you get involved or see a project?
Obviously, as a public broadcaster, we have regulations and laws and everything that we have to respect. So each year we have 2 to 3 public tenders for drama, unscripted, and kids content. So we have commissioners, a commission which is made of 5 to 6 people, our colleagues from the HRT, and they read scripts, synopsis, and then they decide what will go to the next round. The editor-in-chief has the opportunity to have presentations of all of these projects, and then after the phase of the presentation, we have a mutual opinion about what we are going to commission. Of course, later, each project has their own commissioner editor in-house, and the person is monitoring and, of course, approving the scripts before the process of filming, and then monitoring the process all the time, and is in charge for the project from the in-house.
Fantastic. And can I just stay with you for a moment just to explore the question of, it's everybody's favourite subject, funding. Because it's come up quite a lot this week about how other countries fund development and what those processes look like, how many people it takes to develop a show, who's paying for that before there's a green light. Can I just ask, in terms of you seeing a project where there is already a script or 2 scripts, will the producer have funded that phase of development themselves and taken that risk before sharing that project with you? And when you are then interested, would you fund the development of the next set of scripts?
So if we do not take this project, you're asking me about that, who is financing the I assume this depends on the independent producer. Will he fund and pay for the script before he knows will he have a project from HRT or not? So we are not a part of this as a public broadcaster.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can I just ask, of the projects that you select, the 2 or 3, what grabs you from?
Can you repeat, please?
What grabs you? What kind of stories or what kind of storytelling is?
Okay. When we are picking the project, I hope that our commissioning editors are always into innovative things, innovative approach, and that we satisfy our audience, our primary audience.
But that's later.
Of course.
I'm wondering, what kind of sparks?
For the time, I was one of the commission editors for kids content, so from that perspective, I can answer you because I was not in the scripted or unscripted, of course. Definitely what wows me is knowing the audience and knowing the kids. It's a specific area because you have to know the psychology of kids and everything, but it is very hard to produce something that is very creative, and from one EBU conference that I was, they say, be better than a Peppa Pig, so it's very important to be better than the best. Of course, it is very hard to find something like that, but if you, what you said earlier, if you see the enthusiasm and definitely energy, creative energy from the independent producer, it will be definitely one of the points that will tell me how to pick the new content.
Thanks so much for that. That's really interesting. Just kind of staying with that theme a little bit in terms of your relationship as a commissioner with the producer and with the writer. How involved is the commissioner directly with the writer at this stage, or does everything come via the producer? I mean, do you even meet the writer?
After the project was picked by a commission, according to our regulations, commissioning editor is in charge, of course, for the approving of the script. They, of course, have some suggestions, and they can be involved in picking the cast of the scripted or unscripted for the talents or something like that. So we are definitely in charge. Sometimes, of course, the relationship that Dana was talking about is really specific, so you have to be very wise when speaking and when suggesting some things. Of course, everyone, especially from the creative community, is very selfish about their content. What Dennis said. But I think that a good relationship is very good key to make the best content that you can.
And can I just ask in terms of fully financing, so are you looking for projects only ones that you could fully finance as a broadcaster, or are you interested in projects where you could bring in some finance, but the producer would be able to supplement that?
There is kind of production like that, but it's not then in this quota of independent producers. We can definitely create something with the freelancers, and we do it all the time because we cannot give we cannot be so creative inside our house, so we really do depend on freelance directors, editors, screenwriters, so it's definitely something that we finance then, so without the public tender or something like that.
Fantastic. And I just want to explore that question a little bit more of relationships for all of you, really, because we've touched on this, that it can be a very long journey, and there can be many voices and partners along the way together. What are the key relationships that you look for as you're starting to build a project, Anna, if you are first in?
Well, first of all, the writer, and I'm seeing more and more projects come from multiple writers. Usually a writing team, I think, is something that we're seeing more of, not just a singular voice, but usually, I don't know, it seems to be a trendy thing where there's a couple of writers coming in together. So that relationship is really important, and the relationship between the writer and the producer. And there has to be a great level of trust there. Picking your producers, I'm speaking to the writers in the room, pick a producer that you want to marry. And same goes for the producer, pick a writer that you really see yourself going to virtual bed with, and willing to share the baggage that comes with it, because you're going to disagree, right? It's part of the creative process, it's part of the business, it's part of the pitfalls that comes with this. There's a lot of decisions that are going to be made, there's a lot of conversations, a lot of giving back and forth, but you need to know that at the end of it, it's for the better good, and there's a relationship there that you're going to preserve. So that's the first thing. If I see, and I meet a lot of writers and producers that come in together to pitch, because what I usually help with is really kind of strategize how to build that show from that point. How to finance it, where to go with it, where to sell it, who the buyers are. And if I see that's shaky, I'm never going into that relationship. It's complicated enough. So I'd say, and that is extremely, extremely important.
That's so interesting. There was a great presentation, I don't know if any of you ever heard from it, from Frank Spotniks earlier in the week, talking about one of the projects he had where he had 4 broadcasters involved in co-financing the project, and he had different notes from all of them, conflicting notes. And I just think it's really interesting how robust that core relationships are at the heart of a project. They have to be to survive that kind of journey. In unscripted, Dennis, is it a similar kind of development process in terms of kind of collecting a team?
I mean, listen, the UK, in terms of unscripted, you have like 2 options. You either come with completely original story as a writer, and then you have to find a producer who is going to be strong enough. Obviously, you have to listen, you know, what the feedbacks are around, regardless of being rejected or being semi-accepted. And then you persuade your idea. You see, the budget thing is always the budget thing. You know, how much it's going to cost, who is going to present it. Because sometimes as a writer, definitely you have hit the wall, or we all have hit the wall, because they say, it's really a good story, but we don't have money to pay for it. So what does it
say? People use that as an excuse a lot of the time because they don't want to do it.
Yeah.
Like you also
so
have to,
you see, that's exactly what I want to say. You can interpret that in 2 different ways. Oh, I have really good script, but you know it's going to cost me a fortune. Or people are just nice and polite, don't know how to say that my script is not as good. So you really have to watch out and try to hear a few different sources telling you about the script, and try to see. You know, they say, you know, when one person tells you that you're drunk, you ignore him, and 10 people tell you that you're drunk, you start rolling around. So, you know, it is pretty much with the script. So you try to listen, try to find the difference in terms of, are you going to do something different, or are you going to stick with your script and say, sooner or later I'm going to make it? And then even if you do, and even if you finance it yourself, do you have a buyer? Do you have the audience who is going to get it and pay this? So it is not even, don't be like, I'm going to persuade my dream, which is really good. You have to believe in your scripts, but you have to keep writing, and you have to come with another ideas. We are kind of doing like 20 ideas or whatever, day in and day out, and 21 a week out of 20 is rejected. But you keep doing them. And then we found ourselves our idea 5 years ago. It's very active. And it's being commissioned right now. I'll just give you later on BBC. But the stuff is, as for unscripted, everything comes in the waves. So you have your original idea, or you have cookery programs, you have reality shows, and more reality shows. And then you have magicians, and then you have crime, and then you have, you know, everything comes and goes. So you really have to go with the flow in terms of, this is what market needs. I'm going to be different, but I'm just going to accomplish myself because, you know what, like a few years back, we never thought that we are going to do so much of the crime stories, but it is so in that we are so deep now, 3 years of just writing and producing the, you know, crime stories. It is just because there is thirst, there is need, there is the market, how it develops, and, you know, when he's asking you. Also, I'm not saying like you have to write crime stories or discuss crime stories or get the true stories, get your own story, but just to see how long it's going to take to get something which is now needed, or your idea maybe, it is as good, park it elsewhere for the time being, get for another one and see it's a better time to come. It's all cliche, it is not bad idea, it's just bad timing.
I would kind of stress always who is the audience and where do you see your project airing. And I think that's something that people don't ask enough. They're so into wanting to tell the story that they don't think who's the receptor. And I think that's very, very important with anything that you do. Where do you see it airing? And if the answer, and I'm warning right now, if the answer is Netflix and the audience is everyone, you have nothing. All right? That's never, ever going to work.
Yep.
You have to be super specific. You have to really target because that's the only way you get through.
That's why, for me, it's very important what I just said, knowing the audience. When I see in a script or in the format that independent producer or creative, someone from the in-house knows the audience and knows where to put it, then it's one of the elements that will definitely help me choose this.
Fantastic. And just staying with this question of relationships a little bit, if I may. What I've noticed over the last kind of 10 years, certainly in the UK market, is television has moved, or television drama specifically, has moved into a very high-end space. And it now kind of occupies this incredible middle ground, which I'm really excited about, between the kind of lower tariff, more theatre-inspired, dialogue-driven drama we used to see. And it's borrowing much more from film and visual storytelling, which is incredibly rich. So to that end, how important is the director in all of this? Because I think we would have had a conversation about TV drama 20 years ago and the director wouldn't have been part of the conversation. Has that changed in your experience?
Well, if we talk about our business, of course, it's so these locals I mentioned. They also have to have strong stories and international storytelling, but they also have to look internationally. They have to this. We can sell it glossy, you can sell it international look, but it has to look the way that kind of audience in Scandinavia or audience in the UK or audience in France can identify themselves with this location. And in terms of when we talk about Eastern Europe, it's also, you know, very often an issue because, you know, this Soviet or like post-Soviet architecture looks quite sometimes like not the Western audience can't identify with it because they have some they have like their ideas and their interpretation of it. That's why the look of the show is very important. And then, of course, the director, but not only director, DOP and production designer, and the whole locations. It's all important. Locations, costumes, music, and so on and so on. So the production value of the show has to be also international. And of course, the director as the head of all departments, as I say, is very important.
I do want to add that Beta specifically is funding a program for directors, from film directors that want to move into TV. You're doing that at Series Media.
Yeah.
So there's obviously we've seen that happen for a while. We've seen, you know, actors and writers and certainly directors that come from the cinema migrating over. There's always an interesting conversation to be had about what differs from feature storytelling to televised episodic storytelling. But I think the main thing is that there's a competition in television. You're spoiled for choice, so hence the production level needs to be great, and you're competing on any given time, you know, with White Lotus. If you're producing a show, if you're going to be on the same platform, or at least vying for people's time, even if you're not on the same platform. So to your point, the production value, the storytelling has to elevate and be a little different. But it's not only that you're competing against, you know, numerous other titles. When you're doing a film and you're going to the cinema and you're paying for your ticket, hopefully, you know, you create a contract, right? You're in it for whatever the 2 hours that the story takes to unravel. With television, it's so easy to play next or to go in and to find another title if it doesn't grab you. That contract doesn't exist. So I think getting directors to understand the new medium and how, you know, that comes into play, and also realizing there's an endless choice almost. It feels like an endless choice out there for television.
Yeah. And there's been some interesting stats as Netflix have started to share some of their data. I think kind of 5 years ago they were saying that the audience will make a decision within the first 10 minutes. But now I'm hearing actually the data says you've got 4 minutes. And then people will make a decision. If you haven't put an interesting incident in the first 4 minutes, they're out.
I literally got a note like that on a show I'm working on. We started something I'm working on right now, and we started with a flashback, a little grainy, you know, kind of sepia colors, something that takes place in 1978, a true event. And the note was like, nobody's going to want to watch that. And our characters were kids in that, and obviously they're adults and the rest of it. It's like, you're misleading your audience. They're going to think it's a period piece and a show about kids. Change all of the first scene, which we did.
Yeah.
Because you have to trust that experience with, you know, the platform, with your buyer. And you have to kind of go, okay, you know, that's a note.
Fantastic.
In terms
Yeah.
of these 4 minutes, if I may say, just quickly, in terms, when going back to pitching and getting these ideas through, you get a script, which is like very good script. Do you have time to go through whole script? Don't get me wrong on this. Everybody says, don't worry, I will read it through. But what we are finding now, especially from street, even after 20 years, we were asked always, the title is very important. The title is so important, people, to get it right, because title is the first one who is going to catch somebody's eye. You wouldn't believe how much of the semi-commission is done just reading the title. The second thing is a taster. Do like minute and a half, 2 minutes, a small video taster, presentation, teaser, whatever you're going to call it. Seeing is believing, unfortunately, is these days. Not reading is believing. It will come to it, but it is not the phase one. Whatever you do, make a taster. If you say, okay, I'm going to do a drama, it's going to be scripted, or it's going to be something unscripted, obviously I didn't film everything. Get a couple of stills, get a couple of headlines. Is it whatever it's going to be? It is true story, this and this, just hit them with the bullet points, what you and your story is all about. Give them 2 minutes attention. That they're going to say, part 3, I'm not going to the script yet. I'm going to the short synopsis that you wrote about the program. And then you invited, you read the script, and you move forward. I'm telling you, seriously, after all these years, the headline, I'll give you, if I may, just a quick example.
Yes.
We did, back in time, the series, as I call it, Usual Suspects, for Nat Geo called The Truth Behind. So it was truth behind the crystal skulls, truth behind King Arthur, Bermuda Triangle, UFOs, as you know. So all these Usual Suspects. So we finished the series for Nat Geo's, and it came that Sam Brooks, which is actress Mel Brooks' son, Sam Brooks, which is his son, we got in touch with him as a talent. That's another very important thing. If you have talent to touch, it does work. He is the writer of a Zombies book. And they said, how about we make now the truth behind zombies? Okay, so this is an example that I'm trying to say that there's nothing is impossible. Really, nothing is impossible. And I thought that was a joke at the beginning. And I said, zombies, it's not something like you go to the archive. Oh, let's see zombies from 1974. Or let's see what are the zombies' most famous premier players are, whatever. So obviously, I'm not saying they don't exist, so I don't want to disagree with part of the audience. But anyway, so we started to say how we are going to make a program based on one single very good author and celebrity who is writing about zombies and make the truth behind the zombies. Where do you start? And I was literally picking up the phone, calling somebody, as you know, the Americans love zombies and, zombie stories. And I was just like, there is like Zombie Weekly, Zombie Daily, we and zombies, we are alive, trust, believe in ourselves, we rock, or we zombie, or whatever it is. So, you know what, and then it's like you pick up the phone because they don't have emails. Zombies don't write, if you didn't know. So, but they still have the phones, they can talk. And, I pick up the phone and, I said, you know what, we are making, I don't know, it's like, I was funny to myself and embarrassing. So we are making the Truth Behind Zombies program. Would you be interested to participate? And it was like 3 seconds, pause. I said, this guy is just collecting all the bad words to tell me. He said, finally somebody believes in me. From there on, we made the program. It was about cannibalism. It was about zombies, about all the stories. So it is just everything is possible. Think about title. Think about the taster.
Fantastic advice. Thank you, Dennis. I'm very conscious of time, and I do want to make sure there's a little bit of time at the end for questions from the floor. I wanted to just take the opportunity, Rahela, to speak a little bit about the experience that you'd had when you were commissioning kids and youth, and kind of whether you would do what you did differently from what had been done before, what lessons you learned from that, if you could just speak to that.
So before this position that I'm in now, I was the head of strategy for kids and youth, and I was given this task to build the reach on kids and youth on Croatian radio television, because it was really, really low. It was just 10% weekly 15-minute reach. So what I've decided to do is to have an academic approach For a year and a half, I was reading academic papers, doing researches, doing ethnological researches, having conversations with EBU members, with head of kids content and head of kids programming, and did a strategy that is now definitely working because, for example, we are now generating more than 75 million views on YouTube, on our kids' YouTube channel with only homegrown content from the independent productions and our in-house productions. So it is something definitely that I could use in this part of drama and scripted and unscripted content. I think it really worked, and the relationship with the independent producers from this area of content is really, really good, and we are working with them all the time and also taking them as freelancers for some other projects. So we are really happy that the work was done good.
Congratulations on that
you.
success, because that's phenomenal. And it just shows that there is talent and ideas here
Definitely.
at home.
Yeah.
You didn't need to buy in those kids' programs.
Yeah.
You could create them here. And actually, a few of us, I think, saw a presentation by one of the companies earlier this week, and it was just so exciting how in touch with their audience, their young audience they were, including in the young adult space. Just staying with that thought for a moment in terms of like lessons learned. So a few of us were judging the TV writing contests for scripted and unscripted. Awards coming up soon. To the panel, were there things that you that you were really excited about in terms of what was coming through from here? And what would you like to have seen more of in that submissions?
I'll just say quickly, I mean, as I was really excited, it's my third year about doing these panels, I'm really, really excited every year getting the whole idea about getting the new talents and new writers an opportunity or chance to do something like this and to be judged and advised. And I mean, judge is such a wrong word. It is advise what you'll be searching for from all of us or whoever is going to be in the panel to discuss this. I'm sure your ideas are very good, but I'm sure that with a little bit of twist, your ideas can be even better. So it is not question of believing, it's just question open up and make sure, again, what I'm starting at the beginning, you believe in this. Just short, this what is being done through NEM from those few years, it's such great opportunities, and it has to be, it must be listened through the producers around the region, the area that is being covered, because that is the only way for people to succeed, for you to have something original. I don't want to say to like nitty-gritty to employ more people to get all this filming and all these things, but to gather your own talent, which is going to produce more and more for you, and you're going to be happy either as a TV channel or as a production company or as a country involved.
Fantastic. Thank you, Dennis. Was there anything that kind of caught your eye in terms of takeaways?
I think from the reading and also getting to meet people here, I think you need to be the word authenticity is the one that always is the right one to use. Don't try to emulate. Don't try to go and say, oh, you know, we've seen other things work in this space. We'll just do it and, you know, tag a local background to it. That's never going to work. Personally, I like for anything that has a personal connection or connection to real life. I always look for that. So I don't know about zombies. I mean, if you can prove there was one, I'll buy into it. But that's personally, that's the way that the kind of projects that I've usually been involved in, the ones that come from, you know, within some sort of impetus. And it could be anything, right? It could be somebody else's story that you heard, or a piece of research that you came across, or a true story that you read. Those are all legitimate, but, you know, why is that connection there? Why is this story the one that's so important to tell? That's what I look for. I can't agree more about the title. I think a title and a great 20-second pitch, not even 30, like a 20-second pitch that we can immediately grasp the idea of. I mean, there's this almost fictionalized version of what buyers do and commissioners, where they sit in their nice offices and they have a couch and they just sit there with their iPad reading endless decks, 20, 30-page decks, and we're going into whatever the 8th character description of potential season 2. None of us have time for that. Like, nobody does. And we're kind of limited in our attention. So if you can get us with a great 20-second pitch, a sizzle. The reason you said that is because we don't have time to read. We'd rather watch a 2-minute reel or read 2 excellent paragraphs. And for anything else, you want people to opt in versus the sending in. Like, never, I would say this, don't inundate us with material. I have never personally opened a single script that came to me unsolicited. If somebody's sending you, oh, here's my script, you should read it, I've never ever opened it. I don't know if that's true for any of you. There's legal issues, but apart from the legal issues, nobody has time. If I don't know what is in there, why would I sit there and watch and read a 60-page script if it's nothing that I've requested to do? So, tease us with a little bit of information, with a great, 20-second pitch. If you can do a 2-minute reel, great. If you can't, a 2-paragraph, a great 2 paragraphs, maybe I'll request a 2-pager, but then come in and have a conversation, or then, when I ask for it, send something, because then I'll want to read it.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I'm just very conscious of time, and I wasn't. I just want to make sure is there any burning questions before I kind of wrap up with the panel? No, we've obviously done a brilliant job.
Are there any television emergencies you need us to solve? No.
So I think that's given us some amazing takeaways. But coming to you, Leo, and to Rahela, are there any things you would like to kind of, for the audience to take away? What's the one piece of advice you would give?
So what I need to make a decision?
Yeah, what would you?
I believe that a good idea can be formulated in 3 sentences. So if you can, so basically I can make a decision on 3 sentences. So if you pitch your idea in 3 sentences, I can give you the feedback if it's glocal or not glocal. So that's it.
Fantastic. What would you?
I can see that everything is in pitching. So the other day I was invited, just to tell this short story, the other day I was invited to Academy of Drama Arts here in Zagreb, and I was thinking, should I go there or not? Do I have anything smarter to do? And then I decided to go, and I was so overwhelmed with young people pitching their projects. Like they did it for 100 years in the middle of Hollywood. So it was really something that I understand why it is so important for this industry.
That's so fantastic. Will you all please join me in thanking my panel for their incredible insights today?